Ancient tablets tell of gods from the sky. Today, Navy pilots report UFOs that simply defy physics. We're told they're two separate mysteries, but what if they're not? What if the beings our ancestors called gods never actually left, they just upgraded their ships? To really get what's happening now, we actually have to rewind the clock and go back to where it all began, which is ancient Sumer. I mean, these are the people that gave us writing, the wheel, and incredibly detailed astronomy, all with a speed that still has historians scratching their heads. And if you could ask them how they got so smart so fast, their explanation is, let's just say, out of this world. Their ancient texts talk about these beings. They called them the Anunnaki. Now, according to most scholars, the name just means something like princely offspring. But then comes this author, Zecharia Sitchin, who proposed a really radical and totally unaccepted translation. Those who from heaven to earth came. And this one idea launched his wild theory that the Anunnaki weren't actually gods at all, but extraterrestrial visitors from a mysterious 12th planet called Nibiru, which, he said, passes through our solar system every 3,600 years. Now, I have to be super clear here. There's zero evidence for Nibiru as a home planet in any actual Sumerian text. That whole part was Sitchin's own invention. But you have to admit, his ideas are actually quite compelling. According to Sitchin's interpretation, the Anunnaki came to Earth because they were desperate. Their home planet's atmosphere was failing, and they needed gold. Not because they were greedy, but to spray it into their atmosphere to almost act like a shield. And what's interesting is, Sumerian texts do talk about gods who were forced to do hard labor, and eventually they rebelled. Now, Sitchin argued that the Anunnaki solved this labor shortage by creating a worker. The Epic of Atrahasis, which is a real text, describes the gods mixing their essence with clay to create humanity. Well, Sitchin looked at this and said it wasn't actually a metaphor, but actually a record of genetic engineering. They upgraded an early hominid with their own DNA to create Adamu, the first man. Now, this story, even though it's not supported by evidence, has some pretty startling parallels to the biblical Adam and other global myths about sky gods coming down to teach humanity. Now, Sumerian texts also say that their gods had this terrifying quality called Milah, basically a divine radiant aura. Now, scholars say, well, it's just a metaphor, but think about it for a second. Could a pre-scientific people only describe the glow of an advanced energy source as a divine, terrifying light? Maybe. And what about their ships? The myths don't talk about feathered wings. They actually talk about skyboats or chariots. The prophet Ezekiel famously described this complex wheeled vehicle descending from the sky in a whirlwind of fire. But for centuries, we've just filed these stories under fantasy. But maybe, just maybe, our ancestors were just describing technology they actually had no words for. Now let's jump forward to 2004, and we're off the coast of San Diego. You've got the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, one of the most advanced naval fleets on Earth, and their radar starts tracking these strange objects. And we're talking about things that appear at 80,000 feet, they drop to 20,000 feet in a matter of seconds, they just hover there and then just blast off. So Commander David Fravor gets sent to check it out. And what he saw was a white, smooth, 40-foot-long oblong object with no wings, no signs of propulsion, and it was just moving erratically above the water. Now, he called it a giant Tic Tac. Now, as Fravor started to descend, the object actually mirrored his movement, then shot straight up and vanished. And get this, less than a minute later, the radar picked it up again 60 miles away. Now, this whole incident was kept under wraps, classified for well over a decade. Then, in 2017, the New York Times dropped this absolute bombshell of a report, complete with declassified videos and everything. And for the first time, the whole world got to see what these Navy pilots were also seeing. The stigma started to crack. This wasn't some blurry photo from the woods. This was hard data from military sensors. From all this data, a former intelligence officer named Lou Elizondo helped popularize what are called the 5 observables. 5 consistent characteristics of these craft that seem to break our known laws of physics. First, you've got anti-gravity lift. That means that these objects, these things, they can hover and fly with no wings, no engines. There's no visible means of propulsion. They just seem to ignore gravity. Secondly, sudden and instantaneous acceleration. They can basically go from a dead stop to hypersonic speeds in literally a blink of an eye, pulling G-forces that would turn any human pilot into mush. Thirdly, hypersonic velocities without signatures. They can fly faster than Mach 5, but they don't leave a sonic boom. There's no heat trail, nothing. It's like they're just not even there. The fourth observation is low observability. They have some kind of cloaking or stealth technology, which is way above anything that we have. And the fifth one is transmedium travel. Now, this one is completely wild. It blows me away, this. They can move seamlessly between space, air, and even water. Now, that's an environment and a mix of environments that would be absolutely catastrophic for any of our known aircraft. When you put all these together, these 5 observables paint a picture of technology that's so advanced, it literally feels like magic. It's probably like walking into Hogwarts to us. A technology that, when you think about it, it looks a lot like the powers our ancestors actually gave to their gods. Now, I know we're connecting some pretty wild dots here and really challenging what we've all been taught to think. Now, if this journey down the rabbit hole is actually sparking your curiosity a little bit more, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I'd really, really appreciate it, because your support is what helps this community keep questioning what we've all been taught. Okay, so let's put these 2 stories side by side. On one hand, you've got ancient Sumer with tales of gods in fiery chariots who glow with a terrifying light. Now, on the other hand, you've got modern military reports of unidentified craft that defy gravity and outrun our best fighter jets. Mainstream thinking says there's absolutely no link. It's just a coincidence. But are we really just using different words to describe the same thing? I mean, think about it. Was the chariot of the gods just some poetic metaphor? Or is a silent tic-tac-shaped craft the 21st century version of Ezekiel's fiery wheel? And what about Milam, that divine radiance of the gods? Well, the gimbal video, one of those declassified video clips, actually shows an object, and it's surrounded by this strange glowing aura. Pilots often describe these things as being intensely bright. So what if divine radiance wasn't a metaphor at all, but a literal description of an energy field they were actually witnessing? Now let's talk motives. If we follow Sitchin's controversial idea for a second, the Anunnaki first came here for gold, which would have required a very hands-on operation. And that would totally explain the myths of gods living right here among humans, teaching them things, organizing them. But now, these UAPs are constantly being spotted over our most sensitive military bases and nuclear sites. It doesn't seem random at all to me. It feels like targeted surveillance. So could the mission have actually changed? Maybe thousands of years ago, the goal was all about resources. But humanity isn't so primitive anymore, right? We've got nuclear weapons. Now, from their perspective, we could suddenly be seen as a potential threat, not just to them, but also to ourselves. And when you look at it that way, that change in behavior makes a strange kind of sense. These big, visible chariots get replaced by these small, stealthy, drone-like things, like the Tic Tac. The goal is no longer to rule us directly, but maybe to watch us from a distance. They don't need to land on the White House lawn. I mean, they've got the ultimate high ground, and they are watching. The ships haven't vanished. They've just been upgraded to a new, quieter mission, maybe. Now, okay, let's pump the brakes on there for a second, because it's important for me to be fair here. Look, mainstream scientific views are crystal clear. There's absolutely zero physical evidence connecting ancient Sumer to modern UAPs. The Anunnaki are myth, and UAPs are most likely, in most cases, sensor glitches, Secret human technology, maybe, or just weird natural phenomena that we don't quite understand. And that's a fair point. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And I think we all agree with that, don't we? And yet, the data just keeps coming at us. The 2021 ODNI report from the Director of National Intelligence in the US basically confirmed that most UAP reports likely represent real physical objects that are showing unusual flight characteristics. Now, that in itself just opens up a waterfall of what ifs. What if ancient texts aren't just myths, but are actually history being told through pre-scientific eyes? What if the Great Flood story, which you find in cultures all over the world, was actually tied to some kind of real celestial event they witnessed? And here's a big one. Why the change from these overt, in-your-face gods to silent, stealthy observers? The timing of that is interesting because the modern UFO era really kicked off in 1947, right after the Roswell incident, when we developed very quickly and used the atomic bomb. Could our crossing of that nuclear threshold have triggered some kind of new protocol for them? Did our ancient observers suddenly realize their little experiment down here was becoming dangerously unpredictable? I mean, the fact that UAPs are constantly seen over our nuclear sites seems to point a glowing finger right at that idea. They're watching our most dangerous toys. Maybe the line between myth and history is a lot fuzzier than we think. We look at a 6,000-year-old clay tablet and see a god. We look at a 2021 gun camera video and see a transmedium vehicle. The language is different, the tech is different, but the core mystery is exactly the same. We're being watched by something far more advanced than ourselves. So where does all this actually leave us? We've got these two stories, one written in ancient clay, the other written in modern radar data. Now, mainstream science will tell you there's absolutely no connection. I've covered that before. And to be honest, there isn't a smoking gun. But the parallels are just too hard to ignore for me. The descriptions of sky gods seem to align with the advanced craft that we see today. That terrifying Milam of the Anunnaki could easily be a description of the energy fields we see around UAPs. And the ancient mission of direct management seems to have evolved into quiet, careful surveillance. Maybe they never left. Maybe they just pulled back to watch a little bit further away and watch this experiment, which is us, watch us grow up in effect. And now, as we start to reach for the stars ourselves, they're leaning in for a little bit of a closer look. The ships have been upgraded to actually achieve that. The mission has changed. But it's entirely possible that the chain of visitation stretching all the way back to the dawn of our civilization was never actually broken at all. But that's just my take on it.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's case. But here's the thing. The mystery doesn't end here. What do you think? Do you think that the Navy Tic Tac UFOs are the same sky gods the Sumerians wrote about, or are they just advanced human tech? Drop your theory in the comments and I'll be featuring some of the best in future episodes. And if you enjoyed this investigation, make sure you hit subscribe and follow, because this is just one file from the Dark Vault. The next mystery is already waiting, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. And for those of you listening on the podcast, thanks for joining us around the fire. Until next time, keep searching for the truth.